let's jump into this. I want to talk to you today about shifting the conversation. Now, imagine that you're in a conversation with a client, and sometimes the client is just like, they just won't get off that track, right? They just won't get off the track and they're focused on one thing, and you know it's not going to go your way. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Let me go full screen here. For example, you ever talk to a customer and they're just focused on price, man? That's all they can think about is price, right? Price, 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 price. They'll say things like, your price is too high. That's more than I expected to pay. Or, you know what? I can buy it somewhere else and I can get it cheaper. And so now you're dealing with a customer who is solely focused on price, not quality, not value, not really understanding the bigger picture. And we see this in the market today. People just focus, boom, on just price. The question is, what can you do in a conversation to kind of get them off the price lineup, in other words, the goal, the track that they're on, and shift them over to something that's to your advantage? Let me give you an example of what I mean. Here's the visual I like to give you. Imagine that this is your customer, right? And again, they're just thinking one thing. That's it. They're thinking price. That's all they're focused on. It's just bam, price. And you know that if you keep going down this road, you're trying to defend price, defend price, defend price, it's not going to work. They're not going to buy. What you want to do is kind of get them to jump the track. Think of like a train, shoot, jump them the track and get them focused on value. The question is, how do you do that? And how do you do it in a very natural way? That's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you a simple formula. This formula is so easy to use that it blows my mind that most people don't know how to use it or even heard of it. So if you just want to shift a conversation, and by the way, this works as selling. It also works in personal conversations too. If you want to shift a conversation over to something you want to talk about that you think is more important. So let's talk about, in this case, let's go with price, right? That's what the customer is focused on. Here's the formula I want you to memorize. And again, let me go back. Oh, sorry about that. So let me turn this on. Let me go full screen here so you can see this. Now, here's the formula. To shift the conversation, the formula is very simple. You first say, let me move this over to the other side so you don't have to look at that. So, first part is the issue isn't, for example, price. We'll get into that. But rather, shift. Let me ask you a question, and then you push the question. Now, let me explain this because I'm telling you, this is powerful. I've used this so many times. It's amazing how easy it is to use. The issue isn't whatever they're stuck on, but rather, now you begin the shift, but rather it's this. And then there's a push question to push them down that conversation. So if we go back to this previous graphic right here, what I'm trying to do, if I can erase this, what I'm trying to do is, if they're going down this track, what I want to do is steer them this way and then push them down that way. That's kind of the visual of what I'm trying to do. You're trying to say, the issue isn't price, it's really about this. And then let me ask you a question. Let me go ahead and give you some examples so you'll see how this works. So again, the formula is this. The issue isn't, right? But rather, now as soon as you say but, remember, we know that but is what they call a transitory phrase. And it basically negates everything that's before it. So if they said, you say the issue isn't price, it's really this, you just shift them over in that direction. So let me give you some real examples, tangible examples of how you're going to use this, and then you can write your own scripts. Let's go to the first one. How about this one? So again, what are we trying to do? Get them off price, and maybe we're trying to shift them over to quality, right? So you're going to say something like this. And by the way, to give this kind of context, let's say that you're selling a large system, right? It could be a server, software, server, whatever it may be. It could be a $300,000 printer, right? And then you would have this conversation. And again, you want to shift them off price. Let's say the cost is $300,000 for this whatever giant printer. What you want to say is, the issue isn't about price, Mr. Customer. Let's say you're talking to the production manager or supervisor, but rather it's about, boom, reliability. So what did I just do? I just went right here, right? Reliability. Let me ask you a question. Now, what I want to do with the question is push them down this track. If your system goes down, what is that going to cost you? Do you see what's going on here? Do you see how you can use this? It's a really cool strategy because, again, what you're saying is the issue isn't price. It's really quality and reliability. Let me ask you a question, and you push them down this track, which is where you want them to go. Let me give you another example. Again, same thing. This time, let's say the issue isn't about price. And let's say this is an example where you're trying to say, you need to buy our product or service if you want to remain competitive in the market. So here's what you do. Again, same strategy. The issue isn't about price, it's about market share. Let me ask you a question. If you do nothing, how much market share will you lose to your competition? Now, notice what I'm trying to do here. They're focused on price. I'm trying to shift them off to what's going to cost them. In other words, here's price up here. That's what they're focused on. I'm saying, but what's the real cost? In this case, what's the cost of inaction? So in other words, when you're talking to a client, sometimes they're just focused on what they're paying. They're not focused on what they're losing if they don't take action. So by using this formula, again, the issue isn't blank, but rather this. Let me ask you a question. You're pushing down this track. So again, you're following this path. How about one more example? Okay, here it goes. Now in this case, it's maybe utilization, using the equipment. Again, it could be price. The issue isn't price, Mr. Customer, but rather about, in this case, you're selling pools, right? And the pool you're selling, let's say, is about, I'll be conservative and say it's a $150,000 pool. So what you want to say is they're focused on, wow, that's a lot of money for a pool, right? Like, wow, 150,000, 200,000, right? That's a lot of money for a pool. So if they're focused on, man, that's just a lot of money for a pool, what you want to do is shift the conversation away from pools, and you want to say it's about utilization. The issue is about price. It's about memories being created. Let me ask you a question. How often do you think you and or your family will use this over a 10-year period? Now, notice what we're doing here. Two things. One is the emotional aspect of it's not about price, it's about creating memories. But also you talk about utilization. How often do you think you're going to use this pool to create memories over a 10-year period, right? Do you see it? In other words, how often are you going to use it? And you think about it, for example, if you're selling gym memberships, again, the same thing. How often are you going to use it? And obviously, the more times they use it, the actual the cost per use goes down. In other words, because they're using it a lot, they can justify the actual price. So again, whether it's, again, talking about pools, whether you're talking about printers or just competition, your job is to take their focus off price by saying the issue isn't this, it's really about this. Let me ask you a question, and you push them down. So to wrap this up very quickly, I know I went fast on that, but you guys get this, right? Here's the formula one more time. Again, it's real simple. Let me put my head somewhere over here. The issue isn't, so in other words, think of your issue. Whatever that issue is, think of your issue. The issue isn't price. What could be another one? The issue isn't time. The issue isn't delivery, right? The issue isn't usage. Will they use it? Will they adopt it? But rather, it's about, if it's about time, it's about, I don't know, maybe speed to market, right? Speed to market. About delivery, it's really about waiting for a quality product and not delivery, right? As far as usage, it's about getting ahead, right? In other words, get ahead of the competition by using this. And then let me ask you a question, and that pushes them down. Again, you need that push question. Let me ask you a question, and you create your push question. By doing that, you totally shift the conversation. So again, it's a very simple formula, but you get the idea. All you have to do is shift the tracks, much like a train. The issue isn't blank, but rather this over here. And again, I use this in personal conversations all the time. And you can do the same thing. Even when you're having debates with people, you can use this conversation. The issue isn't the economy, right? People want to argue about it's the economy. The issue isn't the economy, but rather shift them over. Your ability to focus on a niche market and really generate more business. Let me ask you a question. How many clients do you have in your pipeline that do A, B, C? And notice I just shifted that conversation from it's an economic recession over to are you focusing? For example, let's say somebody isn't performing in sales, right? The issue isn't your ability to present, but rather your ability to build your pipeline. Let me ask you a question. How many calls are you making per day? Get the idea? It's a wonderful formula. Again, if you execute it, you'll see how easy it is to shift the conversation. But again, I want to highlight the important part here. The issue isn't, but rather negates that. The issue is this. But if you just say the issue is this, it's not good enough. You have to have the push question. Let me ask you a question and push them down that track. And that's kind of like how you get them going down that one track. If you just say the issue isn't this, but rather it's about this, it's argumentative. But if you say the issue isn't this, but the issue is this, let me ask you a question. Now you've taken control of the conversation and you're pushing them down that track. So that is it. That is how you shift the conversation in your favor.